In the bedroom where winter sunlight streamed through the window, Melissa Clark placed her hand on her heavily pregnant belly. "Not long now," she whispered softly as she stood before the mirror, looking at her reflection. Once, she had dressed in suits every morning and strode confidently to a Manhattan high-rise. Now she wore a simple maternity dress, waiting for childbirth in a suburban home. Melissa had built a successful career at a prestigious New York insurance company. She hadn't grown up wealthy, graduating college on scholarships and night jobs, then climbing the ladder through her own efforts. Colleagues called her iron-willed Melissa, earning trust through her decisiveness and approachability. Her life changed when she met Robert Clark at a business conference. Robert was an ambitious entrepreneur who headed the emerging consulting firm, Clark Innovations. Unlike Melissa, he had grown up in a wealthy family and was always filled with the confidence of success. After dating for 6 months, they married, and Melissa moved to Robert's upscale suburban neighborhood. At first, Robert supported her career, but gradually his true feelings that a wife should stay home began to show. The pressure from Robert's mother Eleanor was particularly strong. Eleanor came from a prominent Boston family, always dressed in luxury brands, and was skilled in society manners. To her, a daughter-in-law who worked at an insurance company was clearly beneath them. "Melissa, when will you become a wife worthy of my son?" Eleanor's words were always wrapped in sweet smiles, but her gaze was cold as ice. Robert's sister Victoria was the same. Working in the fashion industry, Victoria had whispered that Melissa's outfit was outdated, even at her brother's wedding, and seemed to enjoy isolating her at social gatherings. "Robbie, are you really happy with this woman? Jennifer would have been so much better," Melissa had overheard Victoria tell her brother numerous times. Jennifer was Robert's former fiancée, daughter of a Boston banker. In their 5th year of marriage, when Melissa became pregnant, she hoped things would change. "Once the baby is born, surely everyone will accept me," she wanted to believe. But reality was harsh. With the pregnancy, Melissa reduced her responsibilities at work and eventually took a leave of absence. Instead, she began helping with the accounting and administrative work at Robert's company. It was unpaid work, but Melissa quietly accepted it for the sake of domestic peace. "My mother also started out helping my father's company. Supporting the family business is a wife's duty," Robert said. Melissa sighed deeply but didn't argue. Her parents lived in a distant rural town and weren't people she could rely on. During her pregnancy, she suffered repeatedly from morning sickness and poor health, but Robert never adjusted his work for her. He said, "Business doesn't wait," and continued working from early morning until late at night. Eleanor and Victoria appeared only for the weekly family dinner and never supported Melissa during her pregnancy. "Are you eating nutritious food for the baby? At your age, there's a risk of Down syndrome, isn't there?" Eleanor's concerns always sounded like criticism. Amid all this, Melissa's only solace was her friendship with Sarah Johnson, who lived nearby. A single mother of 2 children, Sarah gave Melissa practical advice and was someone who would listen to her complaints. "You're a strong woman, Melissa. You'll get through this." Sarah's words were always her emotional support. Time passed, and at 9 months pregnant, Melissa's belly was very large, and her doctor had given her a clean bill of health. The due date was about 2 weeks away. Melissa prepared the baby's room alone, folding tiny clothes and making everything perfect. "Robert, don't go to the office next week," she asked, but her husband immediately refused, saying, "I have important meetings." Melissa was used to it by now. She had weathered most of her pregnancy alone, so she told herself she could handle the birth on her own too. On the morning of December 13th, Melissa woke up feeling a dull pain in her back. 2 days before her due date. Snow had begun to fall outside the window. She slowly got out of bed and headed to the kitchen, careful of her footing. The back pain came periodically, and she began to feel anxious. Is this labor? She asked herself. From what she'd heard in childbirth classes, for first-time mothers, labor usually takes more than 12 hours from when contractions begin until delivery. No need to panic yet, she tried to calm herself. While eating breakfast, Melissa opened an app on her smartphone to time the intervals between contractions. Pain every 20 minutes. It might not be full labor yet, but she should call the hospital. Mrs. Clark, please come in when the contractions are 10 minutes apart, the nurse said. Melissa called Robert. He had left home earlier than usual, saying he had important meetings starting early morning. However, the call went straight to voicemail. Robert, I think my labor has started. The intervals are still long, so I'm fine, but please come home today. Melissa left a message. As time passed, the pain grew stronger and the intervals shorter. After noon, Melissa called Robert again, but still no answer. That's strange, she frowned. Robert usually answered her calls even when working, especially during this time when the birth was near. After 3 p.m., the intervals between pains were 15 minutes. Melissa was getting a bit anxious and called Robert's company. Clark Innovations, a receptionist answered. Hello, this is Melissa Clark. I'd like to speak with my husband, Robert. Oh, Mrs. Clark. The president isn't in the office today. I believe he's on a business trip. A business trip? Melissa was surprised. Robert hadn't mentioned any trip to her. Do you know when he'll be back? I'm sorry, I don't have the details. Jane, his secretary, might know. But Jane didn't answer the phone either. Melissa's anxiety grew. By 5 p.m., the contractions were 12 minutes apart. Melissa called Robert multiple times, but still no response. Finally, she sent a text message. Urgent. Please contact me immediately. I'm having contractions. 30 minutes later, Robert finally called. When Melissa answered, she heard the noisy sounds of a restaurant in the background and conversations in what sounded like a foreign language. French, she recognized it instantly. Robert? Where are you? Melissa asked, enduring the pain. Hey, Mel. What's up? Robert's voice was cheerful, and he sounded slightly drunk. My labor has started. The intervals are getting shorter. Her words were interrupted by a sudden pain. Robert, where are you? My stomach hurts, the baby might be coming soon. Calm down, Mel, Robert said in a slightly irritated voice. I'm having dinner in Paris with Mom and Sis. Your due date is still 2 days away, right? You're being too dramatic. Melissa was speechless. Paris. Her mind was confused. Paris. Since when? Why didn't you tell me? Over the phone, she heard Robert saying something to someone. Mom, it's Mel calling. She says she's having pain. Then she heard a woman's laughter. Listen, Mel, Robert began again. Mom planned a family trip as a 60th birthday present. It's also doubling as business meetings. You know, I have many clients in Paris. But why didn't you tell me? Melissa's voice trembled. From anger or pain, she couldn't tell herself. Because you'd make a big fuss, Robert answered simply. Besides, we couldn't bring you along in your pregnant state. Mom and Vicky agreed. Melissa gasped. It hurt deeply to be treated as an unwelcome intrusion on their family trip. But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Robert, I really am in labor. Without you here, I'll have to go to the hospital alone. You can handle childbirth on your own, can't you? There are nurses at the hospital, Robert's voice was cold. Besides, I'll be back the day after tomorrow. If everything goes as planned, I can be there. As planned? Babies don't always arrive on schedule. Melissa shouted. I'm here alone, suffering in pain, while you're drinking wine in Paris? You're being dramatic, Mel, Robert sighed. You're always like this. You never try to understand my business or family relationships. Anyway, just do what the nurse told you. I'll call you again when I get back to the hotel. With that, Robert hung up. Melissa knelt on the living room floor, still clutching the phone, stunned. Her chest was full of anger and sadness. During 5 years of marriage, she had endured the cold treatment from Robert's family many times. She had sacrificed her career, worked for Robert's company without pay, and endured Eleanor and Victoria's snide remarks. But this betrayal exceeded her limits of patience. Her husband had gone on a family trip to Paris without saying a word to her, right around her due date, leaving her and their unborn child behind. Melissa grimaced at a sudden sharp pain. The contractions were getting closer together. She picked up her smartphone and called Sarah. Sarah, please, take me to the hospital. Melissa. I'll be right there. 10 minutes, wait by the front door. Sarah's voice was calm and dependable. After hanging up, Melissa grabbed the hospital bag she had prepared in advance. On her way to the door, she stopped in front of the wall where their wedding photo hung. Robert and herself smiling happily. Was it all a lie? This is the last humiliation, Melissa said quietly to the photograph. I will never let your family look down on me again. The doorbell rang, and she heard Sarah's voice. Melissa, are you okay? Enduring the pain, Melissa opened the door. Sarah seemed to grasp the situation immediately upon seeing her. Robert? Paris, Melissa answered briefly. Family trip. Without telling me. A surprised expression crossed Sarah's face, but she quickly switched to practical mode. Anyway, the baby comes first now. Let's go. As they got into the car, Melissa looked back at the house. For 5 years, she had tried her best as Mrs. Clark. But now, something had changed decisively in her heart. When she returned to this house, she would no longer be the same woman. Sarah. Melissa squeezed her friend's hand. After the birth, I want to talk to you about something. Tell me anything. Sarah squeezed her hand back firmly. Staring at the white ceiling of the hospital's maternity ward, Melissa caught her breath in the stillness that followed 16 hours of intense labor. Sarah had held her hand the entire time, encouraging her. Even when the doctors said, this is a difficult delivery, and when the midwife urged, just a little more effort, Sarah never left Melissa's side. Congratulations, Mrs. Clark. It's a healthy baby boy, the midwife approached with a small pink bundle. Tears flowed down Melissa's tired face. Hello, Ryan. She cradled the tiny baby and looked at his small face. The baby's eyes resembled Robert's. Her chest ached involuntarily. Shall I take a photo? A nurse kindly asked. To send to the father? No, thank you, Melissa quietly replied. I still can't reach him. That was a lie. In truth, she had no intention of sharing the news of the birth with Robert. Back in her room, she saw a notification on her smartphone. A message from Robert. She opened it with trembling fingers. There was no text, just a photo of Robert, Eleanor, and Victoria smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower. All three were dressed in expensive clothes, raising champagne glasses. Melissa closed her eyes. She felt something snap inside her. Right after, another message came in. From Victoria. Where's the baby picture? Everyone's waiting. Melissa didn't reply. She had no intention of making her baby part of their collection. She held Ryan's tiny hand and whispered, "Don't worry. Mama will protect you." The next day, Melissa met with the hospital's social worker. Raising a child alone is difficult, she was told, but Melissa replied, "I have a plan." In her mind, the next steps were becoming clear. On the day of discharge, Melissa wanted to leave the hospital before Robert returned from Paris. Sarah came to pick her up. "Melissa, you can use my spare room." For a while, Sarah suggested. "Thank you so much," Melissa replied, tearing up. Her pride was high, but she realized it was time to accept help. Sarah's house was modest but warm. Her 2 children were excited to see Ryan, exclaiming, "Baby brother." Melissa lay down on the bed and felt a sense of security for the first time in days. The next day, Melissa contacted Jennifer Martinez, a former colleague from the insurance company who was now a lawyer. "Jenny, I need your help," Melissa explained the situation over the phone. "That's terrible. Let's meet right away." Jennifer's voice maintained professional coolness, but the anger of a friend was also evident. They faced each other at Sarah's kitchen table. Jennifer took notes as she listened. "You want a divorce, custody, and child support secured," Jennifer efficiently summarized. "Robert's business is doing well, right? Do you have evidence?" Melissa nodded. "I know all the figures since I helped with the accounting." And she hesitated, then took out her smartphone and showed the Paris photo. "He went to Paris without telling me, on my due date." Jennifer frowned at the photo. "This is good evidence. It shows his irresponsibility to the court." Over the next week, Melissa acted with surprising calmness. She checked the status of all accounts in her name. She discovered that her savings account from before the marriage still held a considerable amount, part of the bonuses from when she worked as a manager at the insurance company. "This will last us for a few months," she told Jennifer. "And here's this," Jennifer handed her an envelope. "Divorce filing documents. I'll handle the rest, so you focus on preparing for your new life." Melissa nodded. She contacted her former colleague Rebecca, who had moved to a provincial city years ago and become the branch manager of an insurance company there. "Melissa, you've been through a lot," Rebecca said sympathetically. "Why don't you come to our company? We have an open position. Working from home is possible too." "Really?" Hope lit up in Melissa's eyes. "But I have a baby." "I also have 2 children," Rebecca laughed. "Creating an environment where women can balance childcare and career is my mission." Melissa gratefully accepted the offer. The next issue was housing. Rebecca introduced her to a local real estate agent, and Melissa began looking at properties online. "This looks good," she said, looking at photos of a small apartment. "The rent is affordable, and there's a daycare nearby." Still no contact from Robert in Paris. Melissa wasn't waiting anymore. She returned to the house while her husband was away, with Sarah's help, and gradually moved out essential items. The baby's clothes, her own clothing, and mementos. "I hope he doesn't notice," Sarah said worriedly. "He won't," Melissa answered with certainty. "He has no interest in my belongings." She stood in the living room of the house, facing the memories of 5 years of marriage. The happy early days, the relationship that gradually cooled, the daily insults from Eleanor and Victoria, and the final betrayal. "I'm ending this life," she renewed her determination. On the day Robert was scheduled to return from Paris, Melissa, with Sarah's help, moved the rest of her belongings from the house. After packing the last necessities in a trunk, she stared at the living room wall. "Are you leaving a note?" Sarah asked. Melissa nodded slightly and wrote a short message on white paper. "Goodbye. Don't look for us." She taped the note to the wall. Before leaving, she took one last look around the house. The wedding photos had been removed, the decorative items on the shelves were gone, and the sofa and table were empty. This house was no longer her home, and there was nothing left to show that Melissa and Ryan had ever existed there. "Ready?" Sarah gently asked. Melissa held her baby and answered, "Yes, it's the beginning of a new life." She closed the door without looking back. The direct flight from Charles de Gaulle Airport to New York arrived on schedule. Robert Clark stood up from his first-class seat and took down his luxury brand carry-on from the overhead compartment. His face showed the satisfaction of a fulfilling week-long trip. "It was a wonderful trip," he muttered to himself. The business negotiations in Paris had been successful, and he had enjoyed the time with his mother and sister. Eleanor proudly told others about his success, and Victoria constantly praised him. Time spent with them always satisfied his ego. Leaving the airport and getting into a taxi, Robert finally turned on his smartphone. For several days, he had intentionally ignored communication from Melissa. Giving her some space will stop her from getting so angry, he had thought. As the taxi started moving, he began organizing the souvenirs he had bought in Paris. As an apology gift for Melissa, he had purchased an expensive scarf. "Once I give her this, she'll be in a good mood again," he thought confidently. He called Melissa. No answer. Maybe she's still angry, he thought lightly and sent a text message. "Just back. Have souvenirs. Look forward to it." No reply. Robert frowned slightly. Melissa always replied to his messages immediately. Feeling a bit anxious, he called again, but still no answer. "She's probably busy with the baby," he reassured himself. He remembered she had been pregnant. Come to think of it, her last message days ago had said something like, "I think my labor has started. I wonder if she delivered safely." A sudden worry crossed his mind. But he quickly dismissed the thought. What's there to worry about? There are doctors and nurses at the hospital, and she's an adult who can handle herself. The taxi stopped in front of Robert's house. He gave the driver a large tip and looked up at his home with satisfaction. The large suburban house was a symbol of his success. "Your husband is a success, Mel," he said in his mind. As he took out his key in front of the entrance, he sensed something was off. Normally, at this hour, the lights in the living room would be visible, but the entire house was dark. Is she sleeping, he wondered. Robert stepped into the entrance hall and called out, "Melissa?" No response. An unnatural silence dominated the entire house. "That's odd," he frowned. He turned on the switch, and the entrance hall lit up. But the usual coat rack was gone. The mirror table too. What's going on? Stepping into the living room, Robert froze at the sight before him. All the furniture had disappeared. The sofa, table, TV, shelf decorations, wall paintings, everything was gone, and the room was completely empty. "Melissa," he shouted in panic. "Where are you? What kind of joke is this?" He quickly went through the house. Kitchen, dining room, bedroom, all the rooms were the same. The furniture was gone, Melissa's belongings were gone, and all the items she had prepared for the baby's room were gone. Only his possessions remained, carelessly left behind. Returning to the living room, he noticed for the first time a small note taped to the wall. "Goodbye. Don't look for us." What is this? Robert's hand trembled. For the first time, he began to understand the seriousness of the situation. Melissa had left. She and the baby had vanished from his life. Panicked, Robert began calling Melissa's friends one after another. But no one would tell him where she was. Sarah said, "You deserved to lose her," and hung up. He called the hospital. Yes, Mrs. Clark was discharged last week, the clerk answered coldly. The baby? Boy or girl? Due to patient confidentiality, I cannot provide that information. Robert gripped the steering wheel tightly and headed to his mother's house. Eleanor greeted him in her luxurious living room. Mom, Melissa is gone. All the furniture is gone too, he pleaded with a tearful face. Eleanor sat elegantly with a wine glass in hand and said, "Well, that's not so surprising, is it? That woman never fit in with the family. But we have a baby. She gave birth." So? Eleanor said coldly. You're still young. You can find a more suitable woman. Robert was speechless. For the first time, he seemed to realize the cruelty of his mother's words. Victoria entered the living room and said, "Don't be so dramatic, Robbie. She was always like that. Jealous of your success." That's not true. Robert shouted. She sacrificed a lot for me. At that moment, he realized for the first time the gravity of what he had done. Ignoring Melissa's suffering during pregnancy, dismissing her career, going to Paris on her due date. All these things emerged as a new awareness within him. I have to find her, he resolved. But it wasn't easy. The next day, a special delivery envelope arrived at his office. Opening it, he found divorce filing documents. Custody to Melissa, and demands for high alimony and child support considering the value of his company. This is too much, he complained to his lawyer. Mr. Clark, to be honest, your situation is very unfavorable, the lawyer explained calmly. The courts are not sympathetic to husbands who abandon pregnant wives to go on overseas trips. Robert held his head in his hands. Can we find her? It would be difficult, the lawyer shook his head. If she's received professional help, there will be almost no trace left. Indeed, Melissa's plan was perfect. She had started a new life in a new town, under a new name. Her colleagues united to protect her and did not leak any information about her whereabouts. I'll keep looking, Robert told himself. However, as days passed, his life gradually began to collapse. Some clients began terminating contracts as his personal problems were reported. Eleanor and Victoria reduced contact with him as his financial situation worsened. Above all, he had to spend his days without ever seeing his child, not even knowing whether it was a boy or a girl. Robert was finally beginning to understand the weight of what he had lost through his actions, things he could never get back. Ryan, we're going to be late. Melissa called to her 5-year-old son from the bottom of the stairs. The morning light streaming through the window made her chestnut hair, which fell on her shoulders, shine. Her once bobbed hair had grown out and now had soft, womanly waves that exuded confidence. I'm coming, Mom, a high-pitched voice echoed from the second floor. Seconds later, Ryan came running down the stairs with a blue backpack. His smile was the sun that warmed Melissa's heart every day. What are you doing at kindergarten? It's a special day today, right? Melissa asked as she fixed her son's hair. Family day. I'm going to talk about you in front of everyone. Mom, you're a hero at the insurance company, right? Melissa smiled gently. It's not that dramatic. I just help people live securely. Columbus, Ohio. 5 years had passed since Melissa and Ryan started their new life. With the help of her former colleague Rebecca, she had resumed her career at a local insurance company branch and now led a team of 20 people as a department head. By discarding Robert's name and taking her mother's maiden name, Hartman, she had built a completely new identity. She had purchased a small house in a quiet residential area near her office. Flowers that she and Ryan had planted together bloomed in the garden, and photos of their smiling faces adorned the living room walls. There was nothing to remind her of past suffering. Mom, can I talk about Dad too? Ryan suddenly asked. Melissa's hand paused for a moment. This question had been coming up more frequently lately. As he grew, Ryan was becoming aware that unlike other children, he didn't have a father. Of course, Melissa answered calmly. Your father was. She continued, choosing her words carefully. He was a very career-oriented person. But sometimes he lost sight of what was truly important. He chose his mother and sister over you. There was no resentment or anger in her words. She had decided to tell her son the truth as a simple fact. But I'm okay, because I have you, right, Mom? Ryan touched Melissa's cheek with his small hand. Yes, we're the best team, she hugged her son. Meanwhile, in a dark room of a New York apartment, Robert lifted a glass of whiskey with trembling hands. The view from the window showed high-rise buildings, but it wasn't his once luxurious suburban home. Around him lay scattered papers and empty bottles. Clark Innovations no longer existed. The divorce and child support payments had taken their toll, but the biggest blow was when one of Melissa's former colleagues anonymously leaked the story to a business magazine. The headline, CEO abandons pregnant wife, enjoys Paris trip on due date, completely destroyed his business and reputation. Clients terminated contracts one after another, and investors withdrew their funds. Within a year, he was forced to sell his company. Now he worked as a consultant for small and medium businesses, scraping by. His former confidence and arrogance were gone without a trace. The phone rang, and Robert listlessly picked up the receiver. Can you pay the rent this month? Victoria's cold voice echoed in his ear. Mom was saying you're still looking for Melissa. Is that true? Why don't you give up? It's been 5 years. Robert didn't answer. Indeed, he hadn't given up. He had paid private detectives large sums, searched for clues online, and attempted to contact Melissa's former friends. All in vain. Melissa and Ryan had completely vanished from his life. Most painful was the fact that he had never seen his child's face. Whether it was a boy or a girl, he finally learned through his lawyer. The word son left a deep pain in his heart. After hanging up, Robert took an old photograph from a drawer. A wedding picture with Melissa. Her smile was radiant. Back then, she truly loved him. But he had been so focused on meeting the expectations of his mother and Victoria that he had overlooked Melissa's value. Eleanor and Victoria grew cold toward Robert when his fortune ran out. Now they were ingratiating themselves with wealthy Uncle Bart, spending weekends at his Boston mansion. That boy has no talent, Robert had once accidentally overheard Eleanor telling his uncle. What have I done? He muttered, staring out the window. Meanwhile, Melissa's life was going well. She achieved success after success at work, and raising Ryan was going smoothly. There were occasional opportunities for romance, but she felt she wasn't ready in her heart yet. Someday, when the time comes, she told Sarah on the phone. But for now, Ryan and my life take priority. Sarah was still her best friend. Occasionally she visited Columbus with her family, and the children played together. The bonds with the people who had supported Melissa and helped her restart her life grew stronger over time. Still no contact from Robert? Sarah asked cautiously. No, Melissa answered calmly. According to my lawyer, he's still looking. But my choice won't change. Melissa's choice wasn't simple revenge. It was a decision to protect herself and her son. A choice to escape the influence of Robert and his family and raise her child in a healthy environment. She didn't hate Robert, but she also knew there was no going back to the past. That night, Melissa tucked Ryan into bed and read him a storybook. His eyes resembled Robert's, but his heart had inherited her strength and kindness. Good night, my brave prince, she whispered, kissing her son's forehead. Mom, I choose you, Ryan said, half asleep. I'll always choose you. Tears welled up in Melissa's eyes. Thank you, my treasure, she answered gently. I'll always choose you too. Moonlight streamed through the window, gently illuminating the peaceful sleeping faces of mother and son. Like heralding the beginning of a new day.